Good morning to those who listen. It is May 14th, 2018, 10:40 a.m. And as the U.S. Embassy opens in Jerusalem and they celebrate 70 years of independence, we also have violent protests and bloody clashes between the Palestinians and the Israeli Defense Forces. In this update here, which is an hour old now, 43 people have been killed in the protests, and I heard over 900 injured.
A moment of triumph as U.S. and Israeli officials celebrate the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. At the same time, in Gaza, the violent reaction that move is fueling. Palestinian officials say Israel's military has killed at least 43 people and wounded 1,600 more. Listen to this.
Whoa, 1,600.
Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other
Following the violence in Gaza. Ian, let's begin with you. You've been there following all of it. What are you seeing there now?
Okay, this is the deadliest day in the past 7 weeks of protests, with 43 people being killed. You know, this is the deadliest day since the 2014 war here in Gaza, and it was easy to see why. Because, well, let me just show you something actually right now to show you why. We have a drone right here. This drone is likely, there you go. You can see the tear gas that's falling down. It's falling down into the camp, and this has created that chaos that I was talking about. And I don't know if you can actually hear it, but you can hear them pops. And those are people trying to shoot down that drone. This has been happening all day. We see a drone come in, drop tear gas, and go back. And these are people who have been trying to actually push closer to the border down there, that fence. And they've been gathering here, the tens of thousands of people at camps like this one, all up and down the border. And just down there you can see possibly those dirt mounds. That's where the fence is, and that's where these people say that they want to try to cross that fence. Now, Israel says that they're just not going to allow that to happen, and you get incidents where you do have them tear gassing the protesters, trying to push them back, trying to disperse them, also using live ammunition. You know, earlier in the day we heard heavy automatic gunfire just north of our position, and then just south of our position we heard what sounded like heavy artillery. And then in the north, we saw at least 2 airstrikes with Israeli military saying they're going after 5 Hamas positions. So that just kind of sums up the atmosphere of this deadly day. And when you have just tens of thousands of people with one goal in mind, try to cross that border, and you have the Israelis saying they're not going to allow that to happen. You know, Kate, this is one of the bloody days. Tomorrow we're expecting a similar sort of protest.
Ian Lee in Gaza for us. Ian, thank you so much.
Here is another report from CBS News.
Kill Israeli civilians. And just to give you a recent example, I don't know if you've heard about Hakim Awad. Hakim Awad is an 18-year-old Palestinian. Do you know he got paid $2 million? For what? He killed an Israeli family. Parents, 3 children out of 6, one of them 2 years old, one of them 4 years old, because this is the kind of message, and the message that the Palestinian Authority sends to its citizen. They brainwash them, they incite them, and they tell them, go and do it. So this has nothing to do with the embassy move. And, you know, I want to say something else. I hear a lot of claims, like you just mentioned, that the Trump administration has been very supportive of Israel, which is true. But I want us to consider a few things. When President Trump visited Israel, he also visited the Palestinian Authority, right? Then after that, you know, he also hosted Abbas in the White House. So that was the other thing he did. And since then, we've heard very problematic speech by President Mahmoud Abbas. One of them was very anti-Semitic, where he was talking about you know, the Jewish people bringing the Holocaust onto themselves. So, you know, in that sort of climate, I don't see how we can go forward. I mean, it's a bit discouraging, but I want us to be optimistic and look into the future.
The number of people that have been killed in the Gaza Strip have just gone up to 41. And certainly there are instances like the one you mentioned, but for some people young men who go up to this border knowing that they're not going to get into, there's no way that they're going to penetrate this border. What does that say about the level of desperation that some people feel, even though, as you rightly point out, Hamas has been the one to organize these protests?
Look, I want to tell you, every loss of life is a tragedy. And, the frustration of the Palestinians, we can understand them. But they had an opportunity. And, not Hamas, sorry, Gaza. The Gaza Strip could have been Singapore. It could have flourished. But, again, Hamas took that money, by the way, a lot of Iranian money. And what they did is they, instead of building hospitals and educational institution and infrastructure, they basically took it and used it against their citizens. They take those young guys, they tell them to build terror tunnels which are going into Israel. So on one hand, I understand the frustration of the Palestinian population, but they have a choice and they can always say no to violence because violence is not an option.
Does the State of Israel think that Mahmoud Abbas is a viable leader for the Palestinian Authority, that he can be, at least given some of the things that you've said here, that that the Prime Minister or whoever is the Prime Minister of Israel can negotiate with Mahmoud Abbas?
Look, we want to negotiate with whoever the Palestinians choose, but in this case, we have to say the truth, right? Mahmoud Abbas is 82 years old. His recent speeches were very problematic. We don't see him having enough power, having enough control. We're going to negotiate with whoever we can, but we can't negotiate with someone who doesn't see the right of Israel to exist. This is the basic point to us. And I have to tell you, the distance between Ramallah and Jerusalem is 8 minutes. 8 minutes, that's it. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, trust me, is willing at any moment to jump into his car and drive up and negotiate without any preconditions. That's something that Israel has always said, and we're still standing behind it.
Is it one of the preconditions that
in order for the peace treaty to be signed, the Palestinians have to recognize Israel, or Jerusalem, as the capital of Israel, and Israel's right to exist. The question is Abbas going to be that leader that recognizes that? From his speeches, like she was saying, it doesn't look that way. So maybe there's going to be another leader that comes out of Palestine that will actually forward the peace process. And we still haven't seen the American proposal for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. That has yet to be seen still. So I have not seen any more current stories, news from the protests. We'll keep my eye on that and report later on if there's any more violence, which I'm sure there will be. And we know that it's going to continue up until tomorrow. So we still got a lot more to go. And this is something that I was predicting that would happen. And 43 dead and over 1,600 injured is pretty major, and we still got another day to go. So please pray for Israel, pray for peace in the region, and pray that everything goes according to God's will. Thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing. God bless.